Retinol, retinoids, tretinoin, all of these terms are thrown around in the skincare industry so often, and it can be confusing. And I know it can be even for me. And so that's why I wanted to do this video in my Skincare Explained series that I've been doing here on my channel to just break down topics like this in a way that makes sense, in a way that you can apply for your own usage, but as well as if you're an esthetician watching this, you can relay this info to your clients and become more knowledgeable on this topic. And in my research regarding this, I've been reading studies and articles, and I realized that this is a very in-depth topic. So I am going to be doing yet another mini series within this series. And so today in part 1, I'm going to talk to you about vitamin A and its role in the body at a biological level, as well as what are retinoids, what are the benefits, what are the misconceptions. Be sure to comment below if you have any specific questions regarding retinoids, vitamin A. I want to address those in part 2, as well as I will plan to address the types of retinoids, my suggestions for usage, as well as best practices in the treatment room, etc., and anything that, again, you might ask in this video. So if that interests you, you already know what to do. Hit the subscribe button and let's get into it. Just another friendly reminder, I will not be posting next week because I will be in Costa Rica. I'm hosting my very first Rise and Recenter retreat. There's going to be workshops going over building your brand and marketing, and as well as some excursions. So I'm planning on vlogging this entire experience and sharing it with you guys here, and as well as using that as an opportunity to reset myself. And I know I've not been super consistent lately. I appreciate the love and support, and just know that you guys are still at the forefront of my mind. I'm just trying to juggle life right now, my son and work and just personal things. And so I appreciate you hanging in there with me and watching these videos. Again, if you're new here, comment below, introduce yourself. I'd love to know where you're watching this from. As you know, I have resources linked down below for you if you want more information. I don't know if I'm going to host another retreat. We'll see how this one goes, and based off interest moving forward, we'll see if I'll host another one. But comment below if that's something that interests you too. But I do have an upcoming in-person training in the fall in October here in the Bay Area. I am doing a hands-on in-person training. I don't want to go too much into the deets right now because I want to dive into this topic, but if you want more information and you're looking for something that is non-brand specific that can help boost your confidence in the treatment room, as well as learn Brazilian waxing, because I don't know if I've mentioned that Kristen D, my employee, is going to be teaching a master Brazilian course as well, and you can customize the experience for whatever it is that you want to learn. So check out the deets below. All right, y'all, grab your pen and paper or whatever it is that you use to take notes. And even as an SC of 8 years, researching these articles and studies have given me more confidence, and so I hope that it does the same for you in this video. So let's start off with the fundamentals, and I want to talk about a term called antioxidants. And I'm sure those of you watching have heard this in biology, in the diet, in skincare, and especially you estheticians. This was something that we were taught very early on in aesthetic school, but even then I remember sitting there kind of being like, huh? If antioxidants is something you want more specific understanding of, be sure to comment below. I'll put that in my notes to make a video on this topic more in depth in the future. But antioxidants, by definition, are a natural or man-made substance that protect your cells against harmful molecules called free radicals. As we age, free radicals and damage through multiple stressors, through oxidative stress like pollution, UV damage, sun exposure, all of those things can produce a stress on the body and in the skin. So these antioxidants, their role as the soldiers is to protect. When we're talking about antioxidants, there are different types of antioxidants. I'm sure you've heard of vitamin C, vitamin B, vitamin E, therefore leading us to vitamin A, which vitamin A plays a specific role, and it is used in skincare, specifically with retinoids, retinol, etc. And again, in part 2, we'll explain a little bit more of the differences of all of those terms and types and best uses and all of that. Okay, let's get into vitamin A and even define that so that we can understand that better. Vitamin A is an essential fat-soluble nutrient that your body needs to support healthy vision, immune function, and cellular growth. Vitamin A can be found in different sources like food that we eat, as well as supplements, medication that's prescribed in skincare. Again, we'll talk more about that, but it is not something that the body naturally produces. It is absorbed by other sources. You know, me and my analogies, I like to say these so that we can understand this more visually and be able to relate it to our clients. What I want you to think of when you think of vitamin A is a football player, and he throws it to the wide receiver. That throw is a representation of the body then converting it into retinoic acid, and then as the wide receiver receives that football, that is essentially what the body does at a biological level, is it receives that retinoic acid and it then runs to the end zone. And so when you picture the end zone that this wide receiver is running toward, when it reaches the end zone, it is going to go into kind of different buckets, right? Like different pathways of functions, cellular processes that retinoic acid is very heavily involved in the body and in the skin specifically. Hopefully that visual gives you a better understanding of what vitamin A is. And then now let's talk about what the role of retinoic acid is specifically in the skin and its benefits. All right, now let's define retinoids. So retinoids is a blanket term for a family of compounds derived from vitamin A. So back to the analogy, when we think of retinoids, think of the football player. But what team do they play for? What position do they play? So someone could be a running back for the 49ers, right? And that kind of differentiates them as a football player. So when you think of tretinoin or retinol or adapalene, the types of retinoids, which again, I will be going more into depth in part 2. So subscribe if you want to see that episode and don't miss it. That is kind of the comparison I want you to think of. Generally, vitamin A can be referred to as retinoids in skincare. I'm going to place a diagram right here, a diagram that I found in a study that I was reading regarding this topic. And it's showing kind of essentially 4 different functions or benefits of vitamin A in the skin. And I'm also going to list some of these studies in the description box if you're a nerd like me and you want to nerd out and read these. It is very interesting to learn when vitamin A converted to that retinoic acid, it does multiple things. But let's talk about the first one. It helps accelerate the epidermal turnover. We've talked about cellular turnover in other videos, specifically in regards to exfoliation and acne, allowing the skin to release those dead skin cells more effectively, so that way they're not plugging up your pores. That process also has a lot to do with pigmentation, which I do plan on making a video more specifically breaking down pigmentation and how it forms in the skin and my tips and tricks for that and ingredients for that. But yes, retinoic acid is very essential in targeting acne and pigmentation in the skin. So when you think of an analogy that you can compare this function to, is it's essentially just speeding things up. So when you think of like a conveyor belt in factories and stuff, like products and supplies being run through these processes and stuff, think of cell turnover as this one big factory. It is essentially retinoic acid is just speeding up that conveyor belt or that assembly line and that process. And as we know, as we age, this slows down dramatically. And so when we use retinoic acid on the skin, it's going to help the skin essentially do what it's supposed to do, but it just aids it and it speeds it up. The other function that isn't necessarily listed in this diagram, but I know that it plays an essential role in dermal thickening and collagen production. And so what's happening is there's an activation of fibroblasts in the dermis, and it inhibits MMP enzymes. So MMP enzymes are specifically known to break down collagen, which when you think of collagen, think of cement or that structure. The less collagen you have in the skin, that's when you start seeing more of that drooping and sagging in the skin. It's just not as firm and plump and hydrated, and that leads me to another benefit of retinoic acid in the skin, is it essentially helps to increase the level of hydration in the skin by encouraging hyaluronic acid and other essential hydrators in the skin to form. And then lastly, it's also encouraging angiogenesis, which is new blood vessel formation. More blood flow means more oxygen, more nutrients are being sent to the skin. Soldiers essentially are able to come to the front line to do what it needs to do. All right, so we talked a lot about the vitamin A and retinoic acid roles in the skin, its benefits. And so now let's talk about maybe some of the misconceptions around retinoic acid, retinoids, things to consider when it comes to using them on your own skin or for your clients. So the first misconception I want to address is that more irritation means that it's working better. This is probably one of the biggest ones. I come across this a lot in the treatment room, where if someone is not feeling a product on their face, they're thinking that it's not working as well as if it was burning more. And I've learned over the 8 years I've been an esthetician is that sometimes slow and steady wins the race much more than than that fast, more irritating, more aggressive approach. Retinoic acid can be irritating to the skin. It can cause dryness, flakiness, redness, as amazing that it is on the skin. And again, kind of depending on what types and percentages you're using, which we'll address in part 2, you could find something that's a better fit for you, but those are somewhat potential side effects of using retinoic acid on the skin. Just know though that just because you're seeing more redness or more irritation, you're feeling it working more, does not necessarily mean that it is working better, that it's more beneficial for your skin. We don't want to use a product that is ever over stripping or over irritating, because I mean, we're using retinoic acid essentially to help that anti-inflammatory response. Then we might need to take a step back and evaluate whether this type of retinoic acid or percentage or method of usage is appropriate for you. I would consult with a esthetician or a dermatologist, and sometimes it is a trial and error situation. I've seen this a lot just generally with skincare, is that it's not a one size fit all. And so just know that with retinoic acid, it's similar, and just because you get a prescription from the doctor doesn't mean that it's necessarily better for you. And if you guys have been following along in the series, the last misconception has to do with purging, and I did do a video about this recently, and we talked about skin purging versus a reaction. And so just know that purging is a potential possibility when using retinoic acid, and watch that video so that you can get a little more guidance when it comes to that. And then this leads to the last point, is that not all retinoids are the same. That is what I'll be breaking down in part 2. So be sure to stay tuned for that, as well as comment below your questions in this video specifically that you want me to address in part 2. And I'm really excited to dive into this topic even more with you. I feel so much more confident and ready to talk about this more with my clients, especially those that are dealing with more in-depth issues in their skin. And it just feels like retinoids really can be that solution. I will miss you guys. I'll see you in part 2, but I will be updating you as much as I can on my Instagram. I don't know if you guys noticed, but my TikTok, Kristen Marie Co. _ was removed, and I just haven't had the time to go and figure out how to get it reactivated. It was like flagged for some reason, and I just haven't researched into it as to why it was flagged, and I honestly just haven't had the time even honestly to be on TikTok like that. But you can follow me on my personal TikTok, Life with Kristen Marie. I'm sure I'm going to be posting on there videos from Costa Rica and whatnot. But anyways, just wanted to let you guys know, if you guys are searching for me on TikTok, that's kind of what happened. But if you made it to this part of the video, give me some hearts, some sparkles in the comments, and I cannot wait to see you in part 2. I hope you guys stay safe out there. I love you so much. Take care.